Right, so the next one of the week, Carl, was Dynamite.
The next one. It was indeed.
And as our Dynamite correspondence.
You can refer to me as Le Champion. So, yes, this week the show opened with Uncle Jakey again, giving one of his legendary promos. So, yeah.
Good old
Uncle Jakey. But yeah, I thought let's be honest, every time he opens his mouth, it's gold, isn't it? So it's good for him to, I don't think I'm not sure if he's not able to be there, but he hasn't actually been there live for a while, but he's been doing these kind of vignettes and, I
imagine, and it's purely speculation, but I imagine given his sort of checkered past with substances and like, he might be in a vulnerable category when it comes to all this COVID stuff. So yeah, it's very logical that he wouldn't be able to be live for any of this, to be honest. Yeah,
I think with everything going on as well, I think it's good that we still get to see him on a weekly basis. And this one was just another very good Jake promo. Same kind of stuff, just basically telling us that the fucking Murder Hawk moron is bad guy. He's this time he's going to win the TNT title tournament. Because he's got a big red leather jacket.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I must admit, I'm not sold on Lance Archer. I'm really not.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll come on to that.
So, we will.
So that's how it kicked off. We then we go on to hear from Colt Cabana. So this was a nice one, I think.
I'm not sold on Colt Cabana.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. So it's one of them. I've never really followed Colt's career. Obviously we know he was CM Punk's busy mate, and he's made a name for himself on the
Isn't
indies.
That his career?
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
I'm probably going to piss people. People who love Ring of Honor are probably going to be annoyed with that one. But, yes, I'm aware he was some sort of, but he's always been a bit of a daft, gimmicky wrestler, hasn't he?
Yeah,
as I understand it.
Well, it's one of them. He's he's no fucking Grado, but he is a bit of a fool. At the same time, he can wrestle and stuff, but he spends a bit more time on the, trying to be silly and entertain than he does actually anything else.
Which is ironic because the main reason I'm not a big fan of him as a wrestler is because I find him quite boring.
Yeah, so clearly he doesn't deliver on that cylinder either. But so I thought it was an interesting promo though. So he basically said that he's come to AEW, to kind of give a new generation of fans who think that he's a joke that he actually does have what it takes. And he said he's now got a new goal, and it's one he didn't think he would ever have in his career, which is to win a title in a company on the level of AEW. So. He gave good shout outs to AEW there, and it was just interesting, I guess, for a promo. He kind of owned up to the fact that he's seen as a bit of a joke, but he wants to kind of set that right, apparently. So I thought, okay. They then go on to the match itself, so we get to see Lance Archer versus Colt Cabana in the first kind of bracket, and yeah, he fucking lied basically because he was still doing stupid shit. Colt Cabana, he was still doing his little weird pins and his stuff like that, but it wasn't. This was the first time though that we didn't get to see a squash from Lance Archer, so fair play. They didn't just kind of feed Colt to him.
Yeah, which I think is fair to Colt because he's more established than the people that Archer's been squashing. All due respect to Marco Stuntz, Colt is in the indies, and as far as Ring of Honor goes, he is a more established wrestler. I think it would have been disrespectful to not give him a bit more of a bout.
Yeah, and the match itself was fine. Colt Cabana got a bit of offense in, but obviously, as expected, Lance Archer ended up picking up the win.
Yeah, Lance Archer going full fucking Hulk Hogan with it. No selling chops like a motherfucker.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, he's there, so he's like just powering through chops to the chest, and he's got stupid fucking hair. Does that remind you of anyone, Carl? Hulk fucking Hogan. I think we know who his inspiration was. He might as well have spoken it up.
I was gonna say he's literally just a fucking fucking gyration away from being the fucking murder hawker maniac.
Honestly, I was honestly almost expected him to just do that whole that pointing at him thing and then going no. It was the minute like Colt was just throwing chops at him and he just went down it. I'm like, I hate when they do that because it's like I get you trying to come across as a tough guy, but it always annoyed me when Hulk would no sell, and I know it was kind of part of the gimmick, but it's like I don't know. I prefer that the situation where like the Fiend takes a lot of punishments, but he doesn't not sell it. He just gets back up again. It's not like they throw something at him and he just doesn't feel it. He gets knocked down and just gets back up again. I prefer that as a mark of toughness rather than it's like, well, I didn't even feel that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a song to go with that as well, isn't there? Where you get knocked down and get
And
back
you
up
get up
again. I
again.
mean,
Yeah.
you're never going to keep him down, really.
No, you're never going to keep him
Yeah.
down. That's the Fiend.
So,
So
so yeah,
that was one thing I noted from that match. I was like, it's almost cringe seeing that in this day and age.
yeah, it's a weird one with Archer. I think he's had a very mixed. I feel like I say this every week when we talk about it. He's had a very mixed kind of debut in AEW. He's had some good booking where he's kind of had a few squash matches and been made to look quite menacing, but then he's had some bad kind of goofy shit as well with like a couple of the vignettes and then stuff like this that you've mentioned where they're just, I don't know, he can come across as a bit gimmicky.
Yeah, you know what? I'll precare to this right by saying I do love AEW. As it stands currently, it's my favorite show to watch in the week, right? As far as wrestling goes. But in the interest of being fair and being fairly critical, because I would certainly moan about it a lot if it were WWE. It's almost it smacks back to that whole thing of the reason I didn't like Roman Reigns and the reason I sort of struggled with the Shield a little bit is the fact that I feel like they're sort of pushing it as this guy, the Murder Hawk monster, he's big and he's tough and you're gonna love him. It's like don't tell me how to feel. Just have him fucking turn up and wrestle and build himself up. Look at Adam Page. Adam Page came into it and I had no expectation of Adam Page. In fact, he lost the title match he had, and I was like, okay. And it's since then that he's built himself up in the public's eye, and that's how you're meant to do it. But I don't know, part of it for me, and I'm not discrediting Jake Roberts. I think he's done a really good job of selling it. I think the build up for him debuting was great, but I just feel like they're sort of ramming it down our throats of like, this, you should love him, and he's a big bad monster guy. It's like, yeah, just shut up. He's becoming the Roman Reigns of AEW for me.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think they seem to be building it up to having Cody versus Lance Archer as the kind of the final of the tournament. So it would be interesting if that is how they end up kind of meeting after all this. But
and to be fair, I do look forward to them. That would be a really good match to see. I'm not discrediting Archer in that sense. I do think he's going to be a good wrestler, and I think over time they need to calm down a little bit. And when they do, and they just let him wrestle and dominate and look good, just because he's a good wrestler, I think I'll receive it a little bit better.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So that was our kind of first match of the week, and then we got to hear from Britt Baker, who obviously was cutting a promo after last week where she got busted open and came across like a bit of a badass. And yeah, I thought it was pretty solid promo, to be fair. She does really play into this fucking fact that she's a dentist like quite significantly. I think because she's playing, but I think because she's playing a heel now, then it is it's part of kind of getting her a bit of heat, isn't it?
To be fair, I think I wasn't overly sold initially when she was like talking shit to Shivani. Siobhan. When she was talking shit to him and was like basically said, "Oh, you could do with some work and stuff like that," and before they sort of built a credibility up a bit, and again, I don't think it was deliberate, but before a sort of badass sort of moment, I wasn't overly sold on it, but I'm liking her as time goes on. I'm liking her more and more as a heel, and I do think it works well to the heel role, but I was a bit worried at first that she was going to be getting the X-Pac heat rather than heel heat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think she's definitely grown into the heel role.
Oh yeah, and she is new to it also. That's fine. There's room to grow. But I must admit, at first I was a bit worried that it wasn't going to work as a heel. But she's getting better and better each week, and I can't discredit her for that. To be fair.
Yeah. Then they kind of they go on to something that they do quite a bit throughout the night, which is they've started kind of getting some outside opinions on the main events on who they think is going to win between Jon Moxley and Jake Hager.
Do you know, I quite like this as an idea.
Yeah, I quite like it.
It's creative for the situation, but I like it as an idea anyway. I hope they keep it going.
I mean,
good fun.
It felt a lot fresher than like what some other shows do, where they kind of just show a match from fucking 3 years ago, or it felt like it was something else that kind of filled a bit of time but didn't feel forced.
Yeah, it's like, well, here's a pay-per-view match in its entirety. We'll see you in a bit.
Yeah. So the kind of first version of this had Ariel Helwani, who's quite a well-known MMA journalist. So he kind of weighed in on it, and obviously was backing the fellow MMA guy Jake Hager. Then they went into Taz.
That feels organic, doesn't it? To be fair, like, it makes sense that he's got the MMA sort of background that he's looking at Hager as a legitimate Bellator, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think he was unbeaten as well. So I like that it wasn't just random celebs either. It was like, we'll get this guy because it makes sense. That was quite good.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and then obviously Taz weighs in on it for some reason because he did some submissions a couple of times. But then he basically bigs both of them up and, does put Jake over, but says he thinks because it's a no holds barred. And the fact that Mox is mental, that he's going to get the win. So
the fact that Mox is mental.
So I think they were kind of giving him the kind of ECW endorsement a little bit there by having Taz kind of call Mox crazy.
Oh yeah,
so.
I like that. It makes a bit of sense. You know what? Again, I always forget Taz was ECW, which is disrespectful because a lot of people are like ECW original and all that. But he's kind of there with Bubba Ray for me, but I know him from WWE, so that's all I ever think of.
Yeah, he was a very very different character when he was in ECW than what they did to him.
Yeah, look what they did to him.
So so that was quite nice, and we do see that a little bit throughout the rest of the night. We then actually get to see a match between Britt Baker and Cassandra Golden. So no idea who this chick is, but I think it was kind of what the match that needed to happen after last week. Britt put up a good fight but ended up losing, and this was kind of her redemption. Really, it was somewhat of a squash for her.
Right.
She basically came in, and we got to see some really some more good heel work from her. So I really liked the bit where she kind of gets them on the ropes and then steps outside and just kind of sits there next to them, just chat shit in their ear. I think it's quite a good little heel move. But true to her work in dentistry, she seems to have like this new finisher move now, which is almost like a curb stomp, but she puts the opponent's like mouth on the bottom rope. So like to kind of fuck up the teeth by kind of doing a curb stomp onto the rope, which I think is a nice.
You wouldn't it's good as a heel thing to do, but you wouldn't think that would be like a legitimate finisher. Like as far as a match thing goes, you think that'd be a kind of a DQ kind of move, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's funny that they kind of allow it, but I thought Jericho, who was again on commentary and again fantastic throughout this, there's a great line from Jericho where he's like, "Look, she's even creating her own patients. Smart move as a businesswoman." And
he's quality.
Stuff like that just literally just tickles me every time he's on.
Absolute legend.
So we had that, and then we kind of go to a few more. So this time there's comedian Ron Funches, who predicted Jon Moxley due to the fact that he's violent, and then Mike Goldberg, again, the former kind of voice of UFC, who's now the voice of Bellator, from a commentary standpoint, kind of backing Jake Hager because he's seen him go unbeaten in Bellator and stuff, and it does kind of legitimize it a bit. So again, quite a big fan of that. Then probably one of the funniest segments of the whole show was the Bubbly Bunch. So it's a nice little piss take on the Brady Bunch.
And you can actually buy that T-shirt now, I believe.
Of course you can, because they are so good. They are so good at just coming up with something and then just fucking making it into money.
Honestly, God, just merch left and right with them. They're even selling bottles of bubbly now. I mean, they're absolute legends.
Exactly. But it's just something so simple, but it's just so funny. Just to kind of see, you get to see more of each of their characters and stuff like that, and even like Jake Hager, who I don't really like, to be perfectly honest. I think he's boring, but even he had me in stitches in this, where he was like just sat by the pool with his kids, and he's like, "And now, kids, earmuffs." So they put their hands over the ears. Like, "I'm going to beat the shit out of Jon Moxley." Just stupid stuff like that. But obviously, Jericho and Sammy Guevara are the ones who steal it every time there's stuff like this going on. It's just so
Sammy,
funny.
he gives me such hope. Sammy, he's like, because he's such a young talent, and it's like he's definitely. I can see why Jericho's seen something in him, like from a kayfabe and from a realistic point of view, because he's such a talented guy, and it gives me hope for the future of wrestling when you see people like him they've definitely got something about them.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I just think they do this so well. It doesn't feel out of place because you've got the kind of stable that the Inner Circle is, where that they can go both ways. Really, they can be like a really funny, silly kind of stable, or they can be like a menacing, holy shit, like they've just beat down everybody and took guys out kind of thing. So
yeah,
well, yeah, hilarious.
No, totally enjoyed. Yeah.
So then they go on to Sammy Guevara, who has a kind of tune-up match before his match with Darby Allin next week, against a guy called Suj D. Yeah, I don't know how you say it, but some guy from the
I imagine it was a bit like Suge Knight, where it's like Suge D.
Okay,
Kind of spelt the same way, so
Let's go with it. Yeah, Shug D. Clearly, I'm down with the kids. Definitely not Suge. He's got a pretty Suge D. So yeah, this was a pretty fun match, really. I think again, as I mentioned, it was kind of a good mix of silliness with obviously some good wrestling skill. You know, he can hold his own. This guy from Leeds, you know, with Sammy Guevara.
Yeah.
You know, the silliness aspect of it was quite funny. There was a bit halfway through where they start kind of doing this little weird dance move, like the arm worm, and like Guevara just sells it really well. He just goes along with it. He's like, "What the fuck? What the fuck just happened?" So yeah, it's just a nice little kind of funny, silly match. But you know, Guevara picks up the win and then cuts a promo afterwards, basically saying that, you know, here's a spoiler for the round one of the bracket. He's going to beat the shit out of Darby, and then obviously Darby runs down the ring, comes in for the save, because he then proceeds to try and beat up Suge.
Yeah. No, it's all in all. Again, it's always nice to see Sammy in the ring. Anyway, to be fair, but no, enjoyable match. The spoiler thing, a bit Paul Heymanish, but not really. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine. We can all borrow from each other. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a good point. That really, the first time it didn't probably feel super authentic, but I think if he's being kind of left, you know, to do the mic himself, you know, he's gonna kind of, it's not gonna be perfect every time. He's quite.
He's still young, isn't he?
Yeah, but that being said, even though it was a little bit of a rip-off, it did what it needed to do, I think, to push the match with Darby. And let's be honest, every time them two face off, it's fireworks in it. So I'm obviously looking forward to that next week.
Oh yeah, no, it's going to be a fantastic bout. I mean, they're both fantastic in the ring as well, aren't they? So both very athletic. I can see a lot of high spots in that one.
Yeah, defo. And then we had some more predictions, this time from Big John McCarthy, who's a MMA referee. So basically, again, kind of backing Hager because he's seen it in person. Then Excalibur says since it's going to go anywhere and it's a street fight, that Mox is going to have the advantage. So it's kind of the same shtick from each of them, but one for Mox and one for Hager. Yeah, pretty much. But I think it did the job. It did the job well. You had people who from MMA who are kind of legitimizing the threat of Hager. Then you have people from the wrestling biz who, and you know, the likes of people from like Taz who are more extreme, kind of saying, well, fucking hell, Moxley's a psychopath, so you know it's going to go his way. So I thought it was a nice way to do it. Really, it kind of built it up throughout the night. Next match, they had Kip Sabian with Penelope Ford come out to take on Chuck Taylor of the Best Friends with Orange Cassidy. Yeah, I don't know. It's a decent enough match. I think, you know, this one involves plenty more shenanigans, as it always does with fucking Kip Sabian. Penelope Ford kind of jumping up on the apron, kind of taking her jacket off, and at one point she goes on to kiss Sabian as well, and then Orange Cassidy decides to copy her and jumps on the ring as well, takes his jacket off, but he starts to play all coy, obviously. So it's yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty good, but this again. So I mean, I want to hear your thoughts on this actually, because out of nowhere, Jimmy Havoc kind of gets involved and takes out Orange Cassidy towards the end of the match, which kind of just felt like it was out of nowhere. Like, I get it, he's British and Kip Sabian are British, so yeah, maybe it makes sense. But
it makes sense from a Paul Buchan point of view. Like, we're the un-Americans. Not seen that before.
Exactly, it just felt a bit odd.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I mean, it's nice to see Jimmy Havoc in more of a prominent position, because he only ever seems to do dark more often than not. We don't see him on Dynamite too much. So, you know, it's nice to see him. But yeah, just slamming him and Kip Sabian together just doesn't make any sense. As far as I was aware, he didn't have any beef with Cassidy or the Best Friends. So purely it must be to team with Sabian. So I'm not quite sure on the move there. And I'll be honest, it's not really related to this match, and I will be fair to this match. It was enjoyable. It was a bit daft, you know. Nothing against the match itself, but ever since I've seen Penelope Ford actually wrestle, I feel like she's being held down by this whole Kip Sabian thing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, the fact that she's his valet more often than not kind of bugs me, because I'm like, well, you could be a great wrestler. You could actually be higher up in the pecking order than Kip if you actually were out on your own. So I kind of don't like seeing her in this position now, because you know, like, I know she can wrestle. I've seen her now. She's got talent. She's definitely got something about her. More so than, all due respect to Kip, more so than Kip.
Yeah, she's definitely the star out of the whole stable. I think I've said before, Sabian's kind of riding their coattails a little bit. It seems, even in this match, she was the one who kind of did a flying Hurricane Rana off the top rope to kind of end up getting Sabian the win. So it's just, I don't know, it's a weird dynamic. I don't see where they're going to go with it really, because she is kind of the star of that, and Sabian just doesn't have enough about him to kind of get over as much as she already has.
I'm starting to think he's not super bad at all, to be honest.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I think Penelope Ford's going to go quite a long way. I can see her.
I can definitely see that.
I mean, she's already got a bit of decent ring ability, so if she can continue that with the gimmick she's got, and she's obviously got a very good look as well, I think she could become a future champ.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's probably what sold me on it, to be honest, is that I didn't think she had any in-ring ability. I didn't give her any credit because I assumed she was just his valet and, taking that sort of Lana role where she might be in the ring a little bit but not really wrestling. But she can wrestle and she'll probably get better over time. But right now she's pretty decent. And I think with a bit of work she could certainly be in the women's title picture.
Defo.
So so that's the only. It's not really a negative against the match itself, but it's just a shame really seeing her back in that position.
Yeah, I just feel like they don't really know where they're going with them. The other week it was Colt Cabana slapping Kip Sabian, and then that hasn't gone anywhere.
I know, and it was like, okay, just make Kip look like a little bitch and then do nothing with it. Cool.
Exactly, and then now it's best friends, and again he's getting helped out by other people. I don't know, they're just not doing a very good job with him, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think they've got any immediate plans for Kip. To coin a Vince McMahon-ism.
Yeah, maybe Kip should take a Kip and let Penelope Ford run things.
That would be funny. I'd actually buy that as a gimmick if he started being air valet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Then the next match we had was Sean Spears against a guy called Justin Law. So some enhancement talent, and again, this was probably needed after the effort he put in against Cody. So it was a relative squash match here for Sean Spears. Still going by the chairman, which is,
a bit shit, yeah.
Yeah, a lot shit.
Can't be the perfect 10 anymore, though, can he?
Well, yeah, it needs to be something other than the fucking chairman.
To be honest,
especially when he still doesn't come out with a chair now. So
that's the thing. I would kind of buy the chairman thing if he did anything with chairs.
Well, yeah, exactly. He used to just come out and slap it on the floor, then sit on it for a bit. But now he doesn't even do that. So yeah, weird. Weird. Yeah, he comes out in a squash match. I didn't know where they were going to go with it really, because they did kind of tease at one point that he was going to lose it again, but then he did ultimately end up squashing him. So I think who knows, they might give him a bit of momentum now, or he's got a terrible win-loss record. I think we called out last week. I think he's like only won 1 or something and lost 9.
Yeah, so. Well, we had a little bit of a moan last week because he's probably had as good a showing with AEW than he has had with WWE so far, which is a shame for him. A bit more freedom, creativity-wise, but when you give Sean Spears creativity, he comes out with the chairman, so maybe he does need a script, I don't know.
Maybe. And then another thing, so just before the main event was something I really liked, and hopefully they carry on doing it, was the tail of the tape for the main event.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether it's just because I'm a bit of an MMA nerd, and I always like to see it and see the stats and see how they match up. But I really enjoyed it.
I think it could work for AEW as well, because they've always been a little bit more about stats than WWE or a lot of other promotions, in the sense of like they do keep a track of the win-loss record and that sort of thing. So it makes a bit of sense to do a tail of the tape. It sort of gels with what they do to try and add that slight authenticity to it all.
Yeah,
so and I think it could work.
Yeah, I just hope that it wasn't just a one-off, just because it's obviously Jake Hager and he's an MMA guy. I hope that it is something, even if it is only for the main titles and things like that. I don't know. I think it just adds a little bit something to it. So I thought that was good. The match itself, meh. Perfectly honest, very meh. I think for all the fucking hype and build it got, it was just, I don't know. It was just weird. It started off like a bit of a MMA hybrid. There was a lot slower paced and kind of a bit of a slugfest. Moxley was trying to take down Hager with single legs and trying to armbar him and stuff like that, which just felt a bit weird. Then obviously they moved it to the outside. since it was like a no holds barred match, and I suppose that's where Moxie's meant to be a little bit more at home. But then Hager started getting the advantage a little bit and throwing him around off stuff, and yeah, I don't know. It's just a weird one. It just felt a bit flat, and the finish as well. I just really wasn't happy with the finish. So I think after everything that they went through and did, and it was effectively just a fucking, I don't even know what he calls it now. What's he called as DDT? DDT. It's not a fucking Dirty Deeds anymore, is it?
Presumably just a DDT. I don't know if he's even given it a name.
Yeah, God knows. But he basically does that onto a steel chair, and then that's how Hager got defeated. I don't know. Seems odd.
I mean, it was a bit of a letdown for the finish. I mean, I will give the match its credit. It was a slugfest. It was very stiff work, very hard hitting, and they're both that sort of wrestler where they'll put that, they don't mind hurting themselves to a degree. Do you know what I mean? Not stupidly so, not at a risk, but they're certainly willing to go for each other. So it was good in that sense. But I take your point. It was probably a bit slow. The finish was a bit limp, really. Not a bad match, but probably not. I think they're probably guilty of overhyping it, sadly.
Yeah, which I think it's crazy, really, because it came out of nowhere only a couple of weeks ago, and they've done a lot of hype work to it. And when it first happened, well, exactly, like when it first happened, I was very underwhelmed. I was like, oh, what? Fucking Moxie and Hager, don't want to see that. And I think because they've done such a good job of hyping it up, I probably suspended, my kind of disbelief of it being a bad match. And unfortunately, I probably sold myself down the river a little bit, because it just wasn't what I expected. It definitely wasn't a bad match, as you've said, but I think because of the hype, it was, I don't know, it just felt a bit flat for me. And I just want to throw it out there as well. I'm not that big on Moxley.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't mind him. I think we touched on this when he was in the title picture against Jericho. I don't know, and I still don't know how he's going to work as a champion. I don't think he's that kind of character. And I think it's kind of being shown now that he's this rebel who enters in through the crowd, and he doesn't buy into all that. So why would he even want the championships and that sort of thing? Like, it doesn't really gel to his character anyway. And I don't know. He's all right. He's not my main event guy, but you can see, all due respect to him, you can see better talent there. And I think that's probably some of the problem. Like, he's there because of the sort of, that big, he's left WWE and he's gone out and he's been on this podcast, on Jericho's podcast, I believe. And, he's done a shoot on that. And there was a lot of like heat behind him that they were making use of. Do you know what I mean? Like him rocking up at, was it Double or Nothing? Whatever it was. Yeah. As a surprise at the end. That got a massive pop, and even I was there for that. I was like, yeah, fucking hell, that's crazy. But sadly, he's still Dean Ambrose, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? He was never my biggest favorite anyway, and he's now Dean with a different name, and he's never, all due respect to him, because he is a good wrestler. He's good in the show. He's definitely worth being there. He's never going to be my favorite there.
No, I just think he's quite one-dimensional. I think, I don't know, he can talk. He's a very good talker, but he doesn't have anything to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's come in, and it was like a big shock, as you've said, and then it was like, fucking hell, it's quite a big coup that they've got him. And don't get me wrong, he's a million times better in AEW than he was as the fucking lunatic Fringe.
Oh yeah. You can't deny that. Yeah.
But all that said, he hasn't done anything to kind of step on or change. He's just there, and he's like, oh, I'm Moxley, I'm a hardcore guy, aren't I? But it's like, well, do something then. I don't know. I feel like he's just
stop fucking saying it.
yeah. I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, it's almost like when he was having that hardcore match with Brock.
Yeah,
you're like, do something then.
Exactly. He's there wielding a fucking chainsaw, and then what happens? Nothing. It's just like, all right, fucking yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but the more and more I see him, I don't see him as a main event guy, and that's quite a sweeping statement. And I'd love to be proved wrong, but he just isn't doing enough for me. Like, you look at the likes of Jericho reinventing himself every 2 minutes. He's just like a
rebadged Dean.
Yeah, he's just like a less ridiculous Dean Ambrose, and it's just like, I don't know. And I've never been big on him in WWE in the first place. He was definitely the weakest member of the Shield, in my opinion. He's the best talker, but I don't know. I feel like he hasn't even done it. He hasn't even worked on his physique or anything to kind of put himself into the main event. Kind of, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like a little.
No, I think I do genuinely think they probably put him onto the title scene too quick. That being said, I could be challenged on that. A lot of people might say, who would you put in the title scene then? But I honestly don't know the answer to that one. But I just think it was too soon for Dean as a character.
Yeah.
I feel like he needed more tenure there. He needed to sort of work on himself, because right now he's got more freedom to not do the hokey shit that he used to have to do. But he's landing back into essentially Ring of Honor, Dean or John. And he's got his freedom, but he's sticking to what he's comfortable with. And like you say, when you've got examples there of Jericho, who he'll reinvent himself, he'll go out of his comfort zone, he'll try something to see if it works, and you've got that kind of stuff. And then you've got Matt Hardy, who's just an absolute fucking lunatic when it comes to creativity. That sometimes I think, is that too creative? And then you've got John Moxley firmly in the middle, holding the belt. And with all due respect, he's probably the least interesting thing on the show at the minute, which is a sad fact for the champion.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you. Oh, that's what the show's about. We talk and we agree with each other.
Prove me wrong, Moxley. Prove me wrong. We know you're listening. Prove me wrong.
I want you to be funny with it now, Moxley. And people may not want this, but I want you to lean into the fact that, like, as Carl said, it's like, well, you're so hardcore, do something then. And I want you to do stupid things. I want you to go and walk on the grass when there's a "don't walk on the grass" sign. That's what I want you to do. I want you to be that extreme.
I mean, I'd love to see a comedy angle with it, to be honest. I can just imagine him, like, Jericho taking off his sunglasses going, "That guy's hardcore," like,
see, this
as he walks on the grass.
And I joked about it, right? And people might think, oh, that's a bit too silly. And even John Moxley might think that's part of the whole hokey shit they left WWE for. But the fact of the matter is, he's got comic timing, and you don't see it much. But you remember when he was up against Orange Cassidy?
Yeah.
And Cassidy done the hands in the pockets, and then John Moxley tried to outdo him. That was funny as fuck.
Yeah.
And I think when he lets himself be humorous, I actually quite enjoy it. And I think he should lean into that a bit more instead of being the serious hardcore guy all the time.
That's it. I think it comes across as a bit forced, doesn't it? It feels like, and he like the little promo we gave at the end of the show as well, where he was like, AEW is the best company. It's just like, is that something a fucking hardcore badass would say? I don't know. It feels a bit lost.
All about the establishment now, eh?
Exactly, yeah. Weird. So yeah, that was Dynamite. Didn't want to shit on the main event as much as I, apparently did, because all in all, I thought it was a pretty good show. I've ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. It's been rating.
One thing I would like to say, sorry to interrupt your rating, but I was quite pleased with how it wasn't too mat heavy, especially after what we talked about last week.
Yeah. Do you know what? I firmly agree. I didn't miss the Matt Hardy stuff, but at the same time, I did miss, like, the likes of Cody and Hangman Page and stuff. Like, I mean, we had Kenny Omega on last week, but it was fucking stupid, like, what they did with him. So it's like,
not half.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just feels a bit like there's still loads of talent there, but it was still a good show with the talent they had, which for a company with not a massive roster, that's like a credit to them, really. That they managed to put on such a good show. If you look at the matches, there's no like incredible fucking names on that show, really. When you think about it, if you look at the whole card up and down, and yeah, it was still thoroughly entertaining. So fair play to them.
I think this is where they've got this this restricted element sussed, because they're dealing with low numbers and a small. They were dealing with a small roster anyway, but it doesn't feel like, all due respect to WWE, and I try and give them a bit of leeway, but then this makes it harder to give them leeway, because it's like, well, we're all in a difficult situation, but AEW still manages to put on an interesting show. It's not feeling samey, and like you say, you're seeing a variety of talent, not necessarily massive names, but you're seeing something different and fun. And I credit to them for they're getting people out there, they're getting people working where they can, where it works, and it doesn't always have to be like, well, Matt's the big name we've got in at the minute, so let's shove Matt down your throat, which we were worried about last week. So it's nice to see that they weren't being. And don't be wrong, he's going to be on it next week. They've already said he is, but a week off, sound, yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, agreed.
But no, sorry, going back to the ratings, I'd have to agree with you on a 3. I think it was good, not the best, but it was good.